Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hey, it's all about coaching. Yes.
Woohoo!
And we have our friend here today, Randy Swaim, joining us here, who's a top certified coach, who's really helping you guys all seek that amazing freedom and see all that potential. Marshall Goldsmith, certified coach, if I recall. It's been
Yep.
quite a while, Randy Swaim. How are you? Coachingforrelevance.com.
Good. It's good to be on. It has been a little while, but it's good to see you. It's always nice to be with Steve too, but always a pleasure to be with you on this.
Yeah,
So you
I've
betcha.
known Steve for like 20 something years. We used to work together in radio. So,
Wow.
yay!
Cool.
Yeah, so kudos to you, to everyone. Tell us a little bit about what you got for us today, who you are, what you do, since you never know who's tuning in.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, as you said, I'm Marshall Goldsmith certified executive coach. My coaching company is Coaching for Relevance. And as you kind of pointed out there, my whole vision for what I do in every aspect of my
Aw.
life is to bring freedom to potential and all those across my path, and help people overcome, to put it in pilot technology and
What happened?
terminology, to put it in to make it so that people can overcome the gravitational forces that hold them back from soaring to their altitude. And actually what I'm going to bring today is kind of very aligned with that in a deeper sense that sometimes people don't think about. But
Mm-hmm.
that's my passion. That's what I'm about. And it's why I was born.
Oh.
It's why I'm living. And so, yeah, it's
And Captain, navigating the airways.
you know what, I know what it is to live my dream with, as you just kind of implied correctly. So been flew in the Air Force. I've always wanted to fly F4 Phantoms, which I'm dating myself when I say that because it's been a long time since they've been online. But I got a chance to do that, and I flew Learjets on a Department of Defense training contract where we always went out and pretended that we were the bad guys. And so, I mean, I know what it's like to live your dream and to have clarity on what that is, and to actually look back and say, I lived it.
Wow.
And so that's one of the things, if you think about it, that drives my passion
Because
for
you
this
know it's
particular focus.
possible. You know it could be done. You've
Yep.
lived it and you worked hard to be where you are, what you're doing. And he's giving us all these amazing tips and tricks, and not even tricks, but things that we just don't think of, that he could foresee because you've been there. You had so many hurdles, but you also accomplished so much. So, Randy, just to remind everyone, it's coachingforrelevance.com. How else can we reach you before we start the meat of the conversation?
Well, I will say that you can go to my website, coachingforrelevance.com, and at the bottom of the front page, you'll see my contact information, my email, Randy at coachingforrelevance.com. It also has my cell phone on there. You can give me a call. If you do call and I'm busy doing something and I can't answer it right then, leave a voicemail. As you know, and as many others have heard, I don't do sales pitches. So, but if somebody has a definite need, yeah, we'll identify something and come up with something and stuff. But I don't do cold calls. I don't do sales pitches. I just build relationships, and
Beautiful.
that's my passion. So yeah, they can give me a call anytime.
Beautiful. All right, Randy, where are we diving into today? Literally.
Well, what we're talking about today, and of course, it's really sort of aligned a little bit with my organizational maneuverability context, which is bringing pilot leadership lessons to leading teams in an unpredictable, changing environment, which, guess what? That's so
Yep.
much of this world today. And it's not just purely academic. But what I also wanted to do today a little bit is bring some neuroscience awareness into it, but also really bring it to a bringing clarity to a real
Mm-hmm.
leadership concept. It's an aspect that a lot of people today don't fully understand, but it's an important difference to really get an insight of. So that's kind of going to be what I bring on this. And it's some things that, as a leader, when you're leading your team, you
Yep.
got to have some clarity on this so that you know when you're being dysfunctional as opposed to really being successful. And so that's kind of part of what I'll bring to that when we're ready.
Awesome.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll go ahead. And the bottom line is, and you guys have, I think I've actually said it one time in a previous show, maybe a little while back. I talked about when you look at neuroscience, uh, the brain releases chemicals basically from neurotransmitters based on what it's experiencing and thinking. And I kind of mentioned this one time before, but dopamine is a chemical that your nerves will release when you're feeling successful, when you're feeling rewarded, and you kind of have that sense that people are applauding you and all that. And what I tell people is it's a term that I kind of adopted that on my own, and it's the concept of dopamine fix. And what happens in today's world is people have a tendency to become addicted to that feeling. And you got to understand some deeper insights as to, when you look at what's going on in your team and what you're doing in your team, to what point are you getting dysfunctional in that, and at what point are you really getting your people there? And the point I want to just sort of make on this is, and you've heard me say this before, when you talk about neuroscience, remember the frontal lobe is the brain that is the part of the brain that keeps people's processing to going. And this is also comes through training and pilot training too. And this is a kind of a fundamental part of kind of where my doctorate work is going, and the central aspect of my thesis. But the idea being that when you're talking about leading your team, particularly in a challenging environment, that maybe not everything is academic, maybe not everything is predictable kind of thing. There's two things that you got to be aware of. One of which is very common in if you have people today that are dictatorial, narcissistic, self-interested, control freak managers, kind of thing. And here's the thing about it is, what I tell people is they have a tendency, and you see this with a lot of speakers, and Joe, you probably will know what I'm talking about when I say this, but you see a lot of speakers around the world today that they want to generate all sorts of emotions in the audience. They want to fire up the emotions. And the reason for that is they want to control the people, and they want to feel that applause, that dopamine fix. And the challenge that I offer with people is, if you're generating those emotions can be a good thing. And I'm going to show you how in just a second. But if that is your focus if your focus is to just generate the emotions and then claim that that's all good, you're being the dysfunctional person, and you're not being a leader. What true leaders do is they help lead their teams in such a way that the teams allow their processing to get involved, and the processing kind of comes into play on that. And as they're processing it, they start to perceive and to get a picture of the real result, the real radical results that are possible. And when they do that within themselves and within their own brain, guess what? They may get some emotions out of it and say, yeah, let's do this. Let's do this, kind of, and get excited about it. The emotions are not dependent on you, the dictatorial manager. Their emotions are created from their insights, their awareness, their vision of the possible benefits of this success if we make it happen. And that's two different aspects about this whole thing that people will see as you look at people today, because the true leaders lead their team's processing. I don't just simply say here, hey, cold water is water that's less than this temperature or whatever, to be a little bit stupid with it kind of thing. But what I do is I ask you some questions, and I look at you and I go, tell you what, think about that overnight. What do you think? And let me know. And when they start processing it all of a sudden they're going, boy, wow, you know what? I got a thought of this.
Yeah.
I never thought of this as, wow, that's a possible success out of this. Wow. You know what? Let's do it. And, one of the things I shared, I think on a previous show, many moons ago kind of thing, is when I was a captain flying Learjets, one of the things that I would do with the co-pilots, every time we go fly, I'd look at the co-pilot, and Jill, if you were my co-pilot today, you may remember me saying this, I don't know, but I looked at them and I said, part of your job today is to think up an abnormal procedure, think up an abnormal situation. And I
And how
said,
you would handle that. Yeah.
and when we're at altitude and we're just cruising along a jet route or something like that, you're going to say, Randy, this is a simulated whatever you came up with. And what we would do is spend just a very few minutes while we were monitoring the airplane and flying. We would spend just a very few minutes talking about that situation. If that happened right now, what would we do? How would we do it? And we really got the processing engaged. And if you only did that 5 minutes each flight, guess what? You're better off when it's done. And the other part of it is, when I did that and I had them do that, they had a sense that I sort of believed in their ability to process and do stuff. And there was a real thing on that. But the bottom line is, when you're talking about this dopamine, this feeling of reward, if you're doing it because you're trying to make everybody purely dependent on you, you're not getting it done. That is not the true reward that's going to lead you to success. And that's very narcissistic. But if you build within your team an aspect where they take their insights and they come up with situations that were just not even expected or anything like that, and they go, wow. And you know what? They may come up with a solution that you never thought about. And you know what? You look at them and you just kind of wink and kind of thing. So it's very interesting that it's two aspects about this aspect of feeling rewarded and all. If you're just trying to get them all dependent on you because you're trying to really force up their emotions and control them and, make it so that they only feel rewarded when they're around you, that's not good. And that's not good for your team. And really, that's a dysfunctional approach. And your interest is not in them. Your interest is in your own arrogant self. But if you take it in such a way that your people are built and developed and created their vision on this, that's aligned with the team. Now, somebody may come up with a vision that's not aligned, and you say, how does that align with kind of what our team is doing? And they may say, yeah, you know what, it probably isn't. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, let's look forward in the future and see if it ever comes on as something useful. We'll just kind of keep it aware. Or they might say, well, you know what, not sure. And you go, okay, well, you know what situations would happen in our team that might make it valuable?
True.
And what do we need to do to be aware of that? So it's this aspect of this dopamine and what we like to do to be successful. The bottom line is, if you're doing it the dysfunctional way, you're not making a difference for your team or your company or your operation or whatever, and you're not leading it to success. You're trying to bring all the attention on yourself only. If you help to build their processing and you're not having them shut their processing down, and they're building their processing and they come up with, wow, yeah, you know what? Some amazing things can happen sometimes. And so it's really an interesting little diversion, if you will, or a split between the dysfunctional way and the self-interested way of what I call the dictatorial manager versus somebody who's actually being a leader and really making them better. And if you do it in the constructive way of building this dopamine rewarding feeling within them that's not dependent on you, then amazing things can happen in your company. Because not only are you bringing success to your team right now, but you're developing your people so that when they get promoted, they're ready for it. And so that's just one aspect about it. When you think about this, that it's an awareness of this aspect of neuroscience and how we sort of have to be thinking about it, because it's really different than most people think. A lot of people will just stay superficial and just this one thing. But you know what? When you talk about this feeling of being rewarded, it's not as simple as most people think. And the true reward should happen when your people are coming up with amazing things. Now, that's because of your leadership, but your leadership facilitated their ability to take some times and really process this. And as opposed to just telling them what to do. And if I'm just kind of a dictatorial person where I just point fingers and tell somebody what to do, guess what? They always go to their comfort zone because this is what the boss wants. So, okay, kind of thing,
Yep.
But the processing goes into what I call a holding pattern, for pilots and everything, where the processing just goes to sleep. And instead of processing the actual factors, and guess what? When you're talking about a challenging environment, there's factors that you wouldn't have expected. Can your team operate that? Let's face it, when you go to take an airplane off on every flight, there could be factors that you would have never guessed, you would have never expected. And can the flight crew successfully accomplish it? Even when, as I call it, Murphy comes on stage. But you know what? That's true when you're leading your team in a rapidly changing environment too. So it's just this aspect of this sense of the neuroscience aspect, and how are you as a leader truly making that happen in your team? And what I just kind of throw out for people is this aspect of, what do you need to do different? Where are you sort of missing the boat? At what point are you leaning more towards the dysfunctional narcissistic side, where I'm just self-interested on me? At what point are you maybe insidiously doing that, as opposed to going the other way? And what do you need to do differently? What do you need to increase your awareness on, and your situational awareness based on who's in your team, perhaps what they're struggling with, what they see as the current challenges in your team, and what can we do about it? And so it's just interesting that when you look at this sort of neuroscience application of it, and how that makes it. If you want to be a leader, how are you really going to bring out the best in your team in a way that your managers come up and go, man, your team did this. That's amazing. And all you do is just shake their hand and nod and say, yeah, they did, kind of thing. And you don't just sit there and talk about yourself. Yeah. You applaud the way the team grew. And so, and there's a couple of times where I had to do this. Now, after the fact, because the senior managers kind of knew what I had done, they applauded me in writing. But you know what? That wasn't my goal. My goal was to bring out the other people's benefit. And they were amazed when they were trying to come up with a solution on something. And they looked at me because they were afraid the boss couldn't just have us shut up right now. And all I did is I looked at him and I winked and I nodded my head. And he smiled and he sat down and started creating this solution and everything. And but it's really interesting that there's two aspects when you think about this sense of rewarding and this mental neuroscience aspect of the brain releasing that dopamine to make us feel applauded and rewarded. If your whole focus is on yourself, you're missing the boat. And that's a dysfunctional way. If you're really building, and that the emotions are not predicated on you generating the emotions, but the emotions are on because the people, and if you think about it from a background of the military, if you feel like you're going into combat, sometimes people think, well, I got to generate their emotions, so everybody just runs with me over here. No, if they have clarity on the real importance of this, they'll follow me. And I know with my non-biological grandkids, I've said this before, if anybody was ever threatening them, I'd take them out in a heartbeat, no questions asked. And you wouldn't need me to generate emotions to do that, kind of thing. And so it's just something to think about, that when you're leading your team, and particularly in a rapidly changing environment, this aspect of the neuroscience and this sense of rewarding, how are you really applying that in your team?
Yeah.
Do they sense that you're trying to take the credit for yourself? Or are you generating emotions to try to make them dependent on you and to just shut their brain down and listen to what you tell them? Or are you truly generating their processing so their belief and those emotions may come to the surface, but it's all within themselves and their clarity of the vision and their belief in where we're going and why it's good and why it's important. And these are just a few things. It's a simple concept, but it goes deeper than most people realize. And I just throw out that for people that are listening to simply say, as the head of your team, of your people in your operation, what might you need to do different? What might you need to see differently? And what are you going to do about it so that you're really bringing out the best of your team? And in a rapidly changing environment, Jill, I think you've heard me say this before, but so often they have to make the choices when you're not there.
Yeah.
And you know what? Can they do that? Or are they just waiting for you to tell them what to do?
Yeah.
And so all of that comes into play when you're really getting their processing mentally coming into play. And that's just something that as a leader, you got to think about. No two ways about it.
Oh, thank you. And by the way, how is that going? I forgot you are going for your doctorate, right? So
Yeah.
what stage are you on?
Well, let's put it this way. I'm in the process right now of writing a 50-page document that is all about the central thread on this. I'm up to about the first 38 pages. So I got about 10 or 12 more to go. And what it is, it's a central thread of my thesis and what it's all looking like. I was actually working at a university in Europe, but unfortunately, you just can't have good conversations, just be in the distance and all that kind of stuff. So I'm moving it back to the US here to look at that. And I'm working on that, but I haven't quit the studying. I haven't quit the writing it. Like I say, this 50-page document that I'm in the process of writing is basically a lot of the data that I'm bringing in. It's some of the articles that I'm bringing in, but also a lot of what I've observed in aviation training and everything. So it's still going forward. And like I said, the big thing on this right now, I haven't stopped working on it at all, but just looking for a university here in the US where you can actually, and there's one university actually in Australia that might be one to look at. And it sounds like there's some good ways of having some conversations down there as well. So what I'm doing, really the only thing that's holding it back right now is I'm just looking to get to a different university where you can actually have those conversations, which are so critical when you're talking about a doctorate work like this. But it does seem to be going forward, and I'm excited about it. And I will say this, that it's amazing how many people, when I bring this up and the central focus of it, really have amazing comments about the need of it, but also kind of how my focus is on it and everything. So I'm excited about where it's going, and like I say, still working on it. It's exciting. It blows me away a little bit in a positive way.
Oh, that's a great thing. Well, thank you. It's always a pleasure having you here. And really, every time you're just so on, you're so dedicated, you're so committed, you're so knowledgeable. And I'm sure your clients appreciate that clearly. And I mean, just to go through what you've went through your whole life career span, and now you're here helping so many people. My goodness. Some people would think flying was enough, right? But no, you had to continue further, when you got no plans on stopping, do you?
Well, let's put it this way. I've told people, I've had people ask me, and I think you've heard me say this before, but I'll say it with a smile on both of our faces. But I've had a lot of people ask me, when are you going to retire? And my answer is exactly the same to them. I go, when I take my last breath. Because you know what?
Oh,
As I tell people, it's kind of like if you're out running a race, I'm going to run through the tape.
oh.
My whole focus is, like I say, bring in that freedom to potential to other people. And I'm going to keep trying to do that until I go right through my last breath. And I mean that. I mean, I'm not going to plan to retire. It is kind of amazing when you look at, and like right now, as you I think probably know, the 78-minute movie documentary of my life and journey, that is I think at last I heard is in the process of being sort of finalized up in Hollywood, and it'll be posted and stuff. And also, it looks like my autobiography is about to be published and will probably be published this summer. So, as I tell people, for me, it's not about me. It's not about my name. Even after I take my last breath, 20 years down the road, if there's one person that doesn't remember my name, but they remember that 20 years ago, there was this guy, I don't remember his name, but you know what? He brought out this question and it brought an insight to me. And I'll tell you what, it revolutionized my life. If there's a number of people that sense that, and I can tell you, I'm amazed at how many pilot instructors have come up and somewhat told me that. They've told me about how 10 or 15 years ago, they were amazed at how the difference I made in coaching them and helping them become better instructors and such. That's the impact of my life. Even if people don't remember my name, if they have that positive insight that they go, boy, I don't remember him, but oh man, this guy brought out this insight. It was a question or a thing that he brought out on TBNN radio maybe, or something like that, kind of thing. And they said, I tell you, I wouldn't have thought about it at the time, but I'll tell you what, I applied it and it revolutionized my life. That's what I want to be my impact. So, if you stop and just help yourself have fun, and that's all you do, you're kind of throwing that in the closet. And I don't want to do that. I want to, like I say, I want to run through the tape. So,
well, thank you so much. Coaching for Relevance, Randy Swaim here. And else did you want to leave off? Do you want to share a phone number?
You can. My cell phone number is 817-880-4749. And if anybody calls, you don't have to worry about me giving you a sales pitch. If you need something, we'll talk about what you need. But, based on that, we may come up with something, but I just build relationships. Beautiful. And so I just look forward to just connecting with people that are interested and having conversations.
Perfect. Thank you. I don't know why technical glitches on my end. It keeps going on and off. It's weird. Every time I touch the screen, see, I just touch my computer and it goes off. Well, there we go. Have a great day, Randy.
Well, the good news is that the picture keeps coming back up. So.
I know. That's so bizarre. Thank you so much. You got good energy. Have a great day, Randy.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.